In this podcast, you're going to hear raw emotion the night of the boat crash. We made the editorial decision not to censor the language, but we want to warn you, it's strong from dashcam and 911 calls. These are upset and frightened and angry kids.
We got the Coast Guard helicopter doing a grid pattern right now, check on markings. As soon as they clear, we're probably going to clear the scene.
Okay.
We searched all the water we could search.
Hours later, one of the kids, Anthony Cook, he's still at the bridge waiting at the guardrail for news of his girlfriend, Mallory, the girl who just a few hours earlier was huddled in his arms on the deck of the Murdaughs' boat, terrified, he said, of the journey ahead.
I finally got to the point I grabbed my girlfriend and put her in my lap in the bottom of the boat and was holding on with my eyes closed. The next thing I know, I'm in the fucking water and I can't find it, man.
And then the horrific crash.
Please send someone. No, we're calling, okay?
And then Anthony's rage.
Oh, you fucking smiling like it's fucking funny. Sit down. My fucking girlfriend's gone, bro. You think it's fucking funny?
Injuries are serious. His cousin Connor Cook, he needs surgery for a broken jaw. And Mallory's best friends and fellow passengers, Miley Altman and Morgan Doty, they're at the hospital getting treated. Morgan's in surgery for her injured hand. And then there's Paul Murdaugh. The kids agree he was driving the boat. Paul is so difficult to deal with, he has to be strapped to a gurney to be taken to the local hospital. Emergency workers even threaten him with handcuffs. Soon after arriving at Beaufort Memorial, Paul is flanked by two of the most powerful lawyers in the Low Country, his father, Alec, and grandfather, Randolph Murdaugh III, the former solicitor. And here's the deal. Multiple witnesses, from the other passengers to the hospital security, all tell law enforcement they witnessed the elder Murdaugh sticking their noses into the investigation by trying to speak to the boat passengers. Family and friends start arriving at the bridge, including Mallory's distraught parents. And as we've previously done, these are written witness accounts that we've asked colleagues to read for you. Officer Chris Williams with the Marine Corps, he walks down to the embankment under the bridge to check out the boat's condition.
I walked down to the site where the boat with a Yamaha 115 horsepower motor beached on the outbound side of Archer's Creek under Berkeley Bridge. The boat had extensive damage to the left side of the hull. The condition of the inside of the boat was messy with large blood stains. There were several alcoholic beverage containers on the floor of the boat and mud stains where the ejected occupants climbed back into the boat to retrieve items. It appeared to me that the boat hit the tripod piling at a high rate of speed and then impacted the concrete bridge support, and the boat beached on the bank at a high rate of speed.
According to court documents, despite his apparent level of drunkenness, there's no attempt to get a standard field sobriety test from Paul Murdaugh at the scene, even though he was described by the officers as slurring his words and drunk and inexplicably stripped down to his boxers. Instead, documents show investigators asked Connor Cook to submit to sobriety testing, which he refuses. And those sobriety tests, they're not the only piece of evidence missing from this investigation. When questioned, law enforcement officers are not sure where Paul's pants ended up after the crash. That's important because they would have presumably been holding the boy's ID and wallet, perhaps his older brother's Buster's, the one police say he used to buy the alcohol that night.
911, where's your emergency?
This is Kenny Campbell.
1 week later, March 3rd, Kenneth Campbell and his brother Keith set out in their boat to look for Mallory Beach. About 5 miles away from the site where Mallory went into the water, the brothers make a distressing but important discovery. This is Kenneth Campbell.
Today, my brother and I went to look for Mallory. We left Broad River Landing and was looking only about 20 minutes before going into the feeder creek. And my brother said, "There she is." I saw a fully clothed person with boots on and jeans. My brother Keith could see blonde hair. She was face down, high in the mud, next to the marsh grass. I called 911.
We're on the search team rescue. We think we found her.
We kept the boat next to her until DNR arrived.
Finally, a chance for closure, at least to say goodbye to Mallory. The night of June 7th was a typical muggy night deep in the low country with off and on rain. The kind of night that most Southerners just stayed inside and cranked up their air conditioners to beat the heat. But on a lonely stretch on a South Carolina road called Moselle in Colleton County, a mother and a son were still outside their private hunting estate near the dog kennels. 52-year-old Maggie and 22-year-old Paul were dead.
County 911, where's your emergency?
Police say they were both shot several times, and the man who found them, well, we all know it was Maggie's husband, Paul's father, Hampton attorney Alex Murdaugh.
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately.
That night at 10:07 p.m., the first 911 call comes into dispatch, and the Colleton County Sheriff's deputies are sent to the scene.
Did you hear anything, or did you come home and find them?
No, man, I've been gone. I just came back.
That 911 call set off a series of events over the past year, events that are still unfolding, cases that are still being investigated, and a double murder still officially unsolved. Today, Alec faces 79 criminal charges, all related to fraud, theft, and money laundering. If convicted, he faces more than 700 years in prison. But a year later, still no charges or arrests related to the deaths of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh.
We're comforted to believe that real police investigative work is ongoing. We, like the rest of the public, wait to see what the answer is going to be. This is not just going away, though. This is not going to die quietly in the swamps of Hampton County.
We could be one step closer to finding out who killed Paul and Maggie Murdaugh.
Alec, did you kill Paul and Maggie?
This case is unique. It's unprecedented in South Carolina history. The only reason why the...
I'm not done. If I could be heard without being interrupted and hijacked by the state as they continue to try to hide the ball on this case.
County 911, where's your emergency?
We're following a developing story, this one out of Colleton County.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Double homicide involving a mother and son.
Both deaths resulting from apparent gunshot wounds.
In this town, nobody questioned the Murdaughs for 100 years.
You know, powerful people make powerful enemies.
You commit a murder in the 14th Circuit, the odds of you going to death row are high.
From the studios of WCIV ABC News 4 in Charleston, this is the podcast Unsolved South Carolina, case file number 1, the Murdaughs. It's been a busy summer in the Murdaugh saga, especially for Judge Clifton Newman. The judge assigned to a case that's not unlike herding cats, with a constant stream of new indictments involving Alex Murdaugh. Indictments now hovering precariously close to 100, with the most astonishing charges finally revealed. On July 12, 2022, SLED pays a visit to John Marvin Murdaugh, Alec's brother. They're ready to move forward with charging Alec with the murders. 400 days after Alec's wife, Maggie, and son, Paul, were found shot dead at the family's hunting estate. That takes us back to how John Marvin and his family are now reacting to the news of these pending charges against Alec in connection to the murders. He says more than anything, the Murdaugh and Brandsetter families just want the truth to come out in the death of Paul and Maggie. He said in part, quote, I don't know if SLED has it right or not. I don't know if law enforcement has the answers. We want the truth. I'm not acknowledging that they are accurate and right. I'm not acknowledging that they are charging the wrong person. I'm acknowledging that I don't know. 2 days after I spoke to John Marvin, I watched Creighton Waters, the Assistant Attorney General for the state of South Carolina, slip quietly, almost furtively, into the back door of the Colleton County Courthouse down in Walterboro, South Carolina. Perhaps hoping he would not get caught on camera, which he was, by me, through the iron gates.
Good morning. Mr. Waters, are you here for the indictments with Alex Murdaugh?
The true bill from the Colleton County Grand Jury came swiftly, within the hour. I read the charges out on a Facebook Live as we received it. Once again, what we're learning is that through a statement that was just released by Attorney General Alan Wilson and SLED Chief Mark Keel, they have now announced that the Colleton County Grand Jury has indicted Alex Murdaugh for 2 counts of murder. And within a week, I was back at the same courthouse, waiting for Alex Murdaugh to emerge from a black SUV on July 20th, 2022.
Alex, did you kill Paul and Maggie?
It was a day of reckoning for Alex Murdaugh. He pleaded not guilty to charges that he killed Maggie and Paul on June 7, 2021.
What say you, Richard Alex Murdaugh? Are you guilty or not guilty of the felonies wherein you stand indicted?
Not guilty.
Demanding to be arraigned right then and there for the cameras.
How shall you be tried?
By God and my country.
I ran into attorney Joe McCulloch after Murdaugh's hearing. McCulloch is representing Connor Cook, the young man who said he was wrongly accused of driving Alex Murdaugh's boat in that fatal boat crash that killed Mallory Beach. All evidence points to a drunken Paul Murdaugh who was actually driving. McCulloch sat in on Murdaugh's bond hearing. I asked what he thought of the on-the-spot arraignment of Alex.
A formal arraignment, which is a little bit unusual in the criminal sphere in South Carolina, to have him ask if he pled guilty or not guilty, and how he wished to be tried, as he answered by God and country. All of that's a little bit of a old school, anachronistic process. I think it was done or requested to be done for a purpose, and the purpose was to send the message that Alex Murdaugh, according to his lawyers, is absolutely not guilty, and that the speedier that a trial can occur, the sooner he will be exonerated.
By now, you might have seen the photos of Alex as he faced Judge Newman, that drastic weight loss, a gaunt-looking shell of a man, once the life of the party, and now looking down, masked up with a shaved head, handcuffed. Alex traded his prison garb for a slightly crumpled white linen shirt with a pair of everyman khakis just for the hearing. Pretty casual for a man who spent his life in a suit and tie in courtrooms across the state, including this one in Colleton County. Alex denied killing Maggie and Paul, but still consented to no bond. It wasn't like he was getting out of jail anyway. He's already got a $7 million bond on his financial crime cases he isn't able to pay. Besides Alex's physical appearance, the most shocking thing to happen in the bond hearing was the state providing no evidence of Murdaugh's guilt in open court. In fact, both the state and Murdaugh's defense attorneys were eager to make the status quo in this case. They said they didn't want any information about evidence or motive getting out to the public. They said it's to guarantee a fair trial. So the prosecution and defense jointly asked Judge Newman for a gag order on everyone involved to keep them from talking to the media. The two sides also asked for normally public court filings made in this case to be automatically sealed. Here's Murdaugh's defense attorney Dick Harpootlian making the case to Judge Newman.
This is going to force us to disclose matters to the general public that we don't really want to discuss in public, because we're trying to get a fair trial for our client, not try it in the media, but try it in this courtroom.
Even the state's lead prosecutor, Creighton Waters, agreed.
The state has no objection to a gag order. Mr. Harpootlian discussed it with me, and we do agree that that would be appropriate in this matter, given the amount of media attention.
But Judge Newman would have none of it.
But at the same time, I want it clear that we will not have any private motion hearings. Public matters will be public.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
He wrote an order in the following weeks denying both sides' requests for a gag order. He said sealing documents will be done on a case-by-case basis. He also reminded the lawyers there are already rules against unethical pretrial publicity. In that same July hearing, Murdaugh's defense team of Jim Griffin and Senator Dick Harpootlian asked for a speedy trial, a right guaranteed to Americans by the Sixth Amendment to our Constitution. Murdaugh's attorneys suggested trial by November or December. Here's Dick Harpootlian.
I would point out they spent over a year investigating this. They took it to a grand jury. They should have presented them with all the evidence that would have convinced that grand jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And so it's there, it's accessible. Mr. Murdaugh does this for a number of reasons. One, as you've heard, he believes he's innocent. He avers he's innocent. And two, he believes that the killer or killers are still at large, and this would allow SWED to put this behind him and go look for the real killer.
The state agreed in theory to the aggressive timeline, but did not agree to Murdaugh's innocence. Here's Creighton Waters again.
The state is absolutely in favor. The evidence in this case is substantial, and it all points back to Alex Murdaugh.
Harpootlian's volley back.
Our response to that is he's wrong. And that's why a jury will sit in that jury box.
Right now it's looking like January 2023 before the trial will begin, which both sides appear to agree on. But the pre-trial theatrics, well, they're already taking center stage. In mid-August, Harpootlian and Jim Griffin accused the state of refusing to turn over evidence they have against Murdaugh, a violation of court rules they believe is intentional.
Gotcha prosecution. It's trial by ambush.
That's Dick Harpootlian in front of his law firm August 17th, accusing state prosecutors of dragging their feet during the crucial evidence discovery phase before trial.
Give us the stuff. You went to a grand jury and said you got enough evidence to convict Alex Murdaugh, convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. Where is it? I don't have a shred of paper. I don't have an email. I don't have an exhibit. I don't have any evidence.
Harpootlian has formally asked Judge Newman to force the state to turn over evidence. But Waters says it's all an act by Harpootlian. Waters says he's been holding off on releasing some evidence to Murdaugh's side because it's very sensitive in nature. It includes graphic crime scene photos, and Waters says he wants Judge Newman to sign a protective order blocking public access to the evidence before he gives it to Murdaugh's team. Waters says Harpootlian and Griffin knew this and even agreed to it before suddenly flipping and accusing the state of holding back evidence. Waters calls the allegations ridiculous and accuses Griffin and Harpootlian of manufacturing drama. But the drama doesn't end there. Murdaugh's lawyers now claim there's a mole in the AG's office already leaking some of this same sensitive evidence to the media. That's after long swirling rumors were confirmed. A cell phone video exists, recorded by Paul Murdaugh at the family hunting estate minutes before he and his mother were shot to death in the same place. Harpootlian questions how details of that video made it into a reporter's hands before he and Griffin ever got a chance to review it for themselves and before family members found out either. They're now pointing the finger squarely at the AG's office. Harpootlian says Murdaugh's family told him SLED agents have admitted to them the Attorney General's office has been leaking murder evidence to the media.
The family wanted to know why they were reading about it in the paper before they heard about it. And SWED agents with them said the Attorney General's office had leaked it.
This is an accusation that the Attorney General's office strongly denies. A spokesperson sent out a statement within hours of the accusations and said all of Harpootlian's claims are categorically false. But it was enough for Harpootlian to subpoena 4 SLED agents to testify on August 29th. He called on Captain Ryan Neal specifically to step forward.
Captain Ryan Neal, he is with SWED. He's been involved in this process and the gathering of the evidence, which I think would explain to the court how easy it is for this evidence to be produced.
That request was ultimately quashed by the judge. After court, I asked Harpootlian why he called on Neal.
Why did you want to have Captain Neal speak as a witness? Why did you call Captain Neal?
No comment.
Prosecutor Waters said the need for that protective order was obvious with this intense media scrutiny.
And the whole point is to have this not fall in the wrong hands. This case is unique, it's unprecedented in South Carolina history, This information, Your Honor, is probably worth 6 to 7 figures.
The judge granted a protective order over the evidence, and he compelled the state to turn it over to the defense as soon as possible. Harpootlian is not backing down.
I'm not here to work with them, okay? That's not my job. My job is to represent my client, and that's what we're going to do. I'm not here to be friends with anybody.
Speaking of friends, what's happened to Alex Murdaugh's inner circle? Coming up, the fallout of Alex's friendships.
He was trusted for so many years, and really the best way to put it was he was like a father figure to me.
Clients like the Plyler sisters, whose mother and brother died in a terrible car crash, their fortune entrusted to Alex Murdaugh, as well as his friend and former CEO of the Southern Banking Institution, Palmetto State Bank, Mr. Russell Lafitte, the first fraud case to go to federal court in the Murdaugh saga.
I still had conversations with Mr. Lafitte often, so I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. He was very trusted, and it just kind of goes to show that you just can't trust everyone. So even when they're appointed to you to protect your assets and your money.
Unsolved South Carolina was brought to you by me, Ann Emerson, along with producer Drew Trupp and editor Daniel Michener. Original music by Maxwell Harrison. If you enjoyed listening today, please consider rating and reviewing. It goes a long way to help others discover this podcast.